Welcome to another edition of Whiskey, Games, and Nerd Stuff. Today's whiskey, we're going to enjoy Monkey Shoulder Blended Malt Scotch Whiskey. Let's go ahead and take a sip. Do enjoy this whiskey. Really, really good. And today's Nerd Stuff, we are going to talk about issue number 1 of Ultimate Spider-Man, the 2024 Ultimate Spider-Man. And this is one of the variant covers. I purposely waited a couple months to talk about this. We didn't have to worry about any spoilers or things like that. So I'm only going to do one spoiler warning. I am going to go through the issue. So if you have not read the issue, don't know what happens, and don't want to know what happens, then I would just suggest you stop the video and watch something else right now. If not, we'll go ahead and talk about it. So Ultimate Spider-Man 2024 is the redo of Spider-Man on an alternate timeline. And I'll just read this first part and then I'll kind of summarize as we go on. But 20 years ago, the Maker prevented a radioactive spider from biting a young Peter Parker. He likewise prevented the creation of any other superheroes and formed a secret council to rule the world from the shadows. When Tony Stark learned the dark history of the universe, he sought to undo it, prompting the Maker's Council to attack Manhattan, killing thousands and framed Stark for it. Peter Parker has lived his life unaware of the Maker's Council or the truth behind the spider, but that's about to change. So for those that don't know, the Maker is, if I recall correctly, it was an alternate version of Reed Richards from the Fantastic Four. Let's go ahead and take a sip. It goes back to a different timeline. His original timeline makes it to where superheroes didn't become the heroes that we know today. And then, it was basically a different version of events. And this is for this particular storyline. I haven't gotten into it too much, so I don't know exactly what's going on. I'm kind of reading this fresh. I just barely read this issue, and I let a few of these stack up, thought we would talk about it. So the writer on this one is Johnathan Hickman. The artist is Marco Sciachetto. Apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly. Let's go ahead and take a sip. And what's cool about this is an older Spider-Man. So this is not the telling of the young Peter Parker who was bit by the spider as a teenager. This is this is an older Peter Parker with a beard, with kids, and married. So yes, this is MJ. So this is an older Peter Parker. Looks to be in his 30s. With kids, married to Mary Jane, and it kind of progresses from there. And then it kind of goes into what's interesting is you see Jonah Jameson yelling. So at first I thought, okay, this is just the same old. And then he stops and is nice to Peter, and it ends up he's actually yelling at Ben Parker, Uncle Ben. So in this timeline, Uncle Ben is alive and well, working at the paper with J. Jonah, and it looks like they're actually friends from what I can tell. So that kind of goes on. They're talking about these events. Something's going to happen. There's a moment between Jay, and then they kind of go to this memorial, and then what we find is that the memorial that's talking Aunt May is the one who died. So in this timeline, you've got an older Peter Parker who's not Spider-Man. You've got Uncle Ben alive. Mary Parker has died. And from looking at this, you've got Matt Murdock here giving the speech, the eulogy at the ceremony. And then you got some talking here about Harry Osborn and his father and mother died in the same attack that killed Aunt May. Then you get some more dialogue. Something is happening at the paper where JJ quits. And then we find that there's a conversation between Uncle Ben and Robbie. Then it looks like Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, or who was the Kingpin in the other timeline, is the one that took over the paper. He's the one that took it over. Apparently they want, the news to be worded a certain way in this timeline, as opposed to reality or any other timeline. So So then Uncle Ben ends up quitting, and it looks like Wilson Fisk goes to this, goes to his limo. The car explodes, and then you get what I'm assuming is going to be the Green Goblin, or a version of the Green Goblin. They don't say it's the Green Goblin. We just see somebody who obviously looks like the Green Goblin. Then you have a conversation in here, which I thought was kind of cool, with JJ and Uncle Ben, where they're talking about, hey, let's just talk about the truth, and he's talking about the truth. He starts laughing. He says, "That's perfect. Thanks for what?" And they're talking about how there's no truth in the news, and he's like, "Hey, how about we just promise not to lie?" And they agree. Peter Parker comes in. They have a conversation. He found out that they both quit. He's not sure what to do. Peter Parker starts talking about Uncle Ben, how he feels out of place, how things are feeling wrong. He's not sure. And Uncle Ben kind of there's some heartwarming conversations in here. And he says, well, if you don't feel you're awake and you're running in your life, then go ahead and wake up. So I think it's a prelude to come of something that's going to happen. We then see that he gets home. He puts the kids to bed. And he has a conversation with JJ. And there's a speech that goes on where Peter kind of talks about that, he feels like he needs a change, and you could tell that it's kind of alluded into. First, he's going to quit his job, and then, okay, is he going to ask for a divorce? Are you going to leave? And she kind of cuts him off and says, hey, is anything going to change between us? And he says, never. He says, well, then you do what you got to do. And then this is kind of where things get interesting, is he pulls out this little sphere that his daughter was playing with at the beginning of the issue, pulls it out, and then it flashes back to the night before, where this cube shows up, and then it's an image of a young Tony Stark talking about how he uncovered that there was an alternate timeline, that Peter Parker was meant to be a hero, that he was meant to do all these good things, he was meant to, inspire people, and if you've always felt like something has been missing from your life, something should be different, and you want to have your life, what your life was meant to be, then he kind of says in there, do you want it back? And then we see the end where Peter Parker, this older Peter Parker, takes out the spider, and then obviously it looks like it's going to bite him. And then you see this caption of him standing right here. So what's interesting is we don't see Spider-Man actually be Spider-Man. We don't see him being, called that. What we do is we kind of see an alternate timeline where if Peter Parker just lived a normal life, got married, had kids, got a job, and all that stuff, and now he has the opportunity to have what he should have had at the beginning. So what's really cool about this is I'm excited to see what they're going to do with this series. There's a lot of cool, fun things they can do with this. And for those, I'm going to go ahead and pause it for a second. Sorry about that. Wanted to get a quick refill real quick. So what I find interesting about this is for those that are like me or a little bit older, I still buy the comic books. I haven't bought near as many as I used to. I don't read as much. I just didn't connect with them anymore. And this is a particular series that I think I could get into. It's an older Peter Parker. It's a Peter Parker with kids. It's a Peter Parker who is married. It has certain different responsibilities. So I think there's a lot of cool things they could do with this storyline. And, if they dare to get really dark with it, now you've got kids that are in danger. You got his wife that's in danger. You've got, what's going to happen when other heroes start coming in. And is this going to be, because I know there's an Ultimate X-Men, there's an Ultimate Black Panther, I believe there's the Ultimates, I'm not sure what else is coming out, but is this going to be turning into a version of the Ultimates? And obviously at some point they're going to be fighting the Maker, but I'm really excited to see what they're going to do with this. And I'm also excited to see if people are going to resonate with this Peter Parker more than the mainstream Peter Parker. Again, I'm really excited to see what they're going to do with this. I kind of quickly went through this, but I didn't want to read it page for page. Would really love to hear your thoughts, comments on this particular series, what you think about it, and what you would like to see them do with it, and what are concerns that you think they might go into that you're hoping they don't do it. I do appreciate you watching this video. Please like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Until next time, everybody, Cheers. Welcome to another edition of Whiskey, Games, and Nerd Stuff. Today's whiskey, we're actually going to have a beer. It is a Melvin from Melvin Star Valley IPA. I've never had this before. I just thought the can looked really, really cool. I'm going to go ahead and open it off camera for a second. Just don't want in case it... There it goes. Let's go ahead and take a sip. That is good. That is really good. In today's Nerd Stuff, we're going to go ahead and go through issue 2 of the new Ultimate Spider-Man. As I'd mentioned in the discussion of issue 1, I'm intentionally waiting until these have been out for several weeks. Gives everybody the opportunity to read these without any spoilers. But if you have not read this one and you don't want to have a spoiler and it be spoiled, then do not watch the rest of this, because I will be going through the issue and discussing what we see and give some of my thoughts. Let's go ahead and take another sip. All right, and this is one of the variant covers, if I recall correctly. Really like this cover. And as I did in the first one, the only part I'll actually read out, the whole part is just kind of the preview right here is 20 years ago, the Maker prevented a radioactive spider from becoming we'll start over. 20 years ago, the Maker prevented a radioactive spider from biting a young Peter Parker. He likewise prevented the creation of any other superheroes and formed a secret council to rule the world from the shadows. In a quest to free the world from the Maker's council, Tony Stark sent Peter, now a married father of 2, a package containing the same radioactive spider and a biotech suit. After watching his uncle, Ben Parker, and mentor, J. Jonah Jameson, leaving the Daily Bugle over pressure from the Bugle's new owner, Wilson Fisk, to control the news cycle, Peter felt called to action and let the spider bite him. Let's go ahead and take a sip. So Uncle Ben is alive in this one, and Aunt May had died in an attack. An attack that you'll find out that who was framed for it and what happened. And then Ben Parker, Peter's uncle, and J. Jonah Jameson are actually friends. So we go ahead and open this up. It's, Spider-Man swinging in a black suit, kind of talking about how... Oh, and before I start, the writers, Johnathan Hickman, and artist, and hopefully I don't say this incorrectly, Marco Cascetto. Apologize if I said that wrong. So you got Spider-Man kind of talking about, he's kind of coming through in his black suit. And then you've got his kids talking about the pictures of this, they haven't called him Spider-Man yet, but of this person. And his daughter is scared of the suit, thinks he's scary. And then Mary Jane's off to kind of go to work. So then you kind of skip forward a little bit, and then you see, again, he's kind of talking about how he's gotten stronger, he's gotten faster, he's got more agile, how he can take a beating. But I don't see any talk about spider sense, so I don't know if it's he doesn't have spider sense yet, or they haven't put a word to it yet. But you can kind of see him crashing. He's kind of contemplating, was this a good decision or not? And then it kind of goes into Uncle Ben and J. Jonah, and here talking about what they're going to do. They're basically going to start their own paper. They're just kind of going through the process of kind of talking about it, ideas and whatnot. What's really interesting on this one is, you would think this would be out of place for a Spider-Man comic book, but I really felt this fit well with it. This is kind of a more mature Spider-Man, which I know is kind of funny saying that about a comic book. It's a more mature comic book, and it is an adult Spider-Man, and I feel like they're kind of talking about issues. These two had quit their jobs because they didn't, they weren't on board with the new ownership and where they were going with the news. And I do think there's some subtle commentary of what's going on with the news and what's true and what's not. Let's go ahead and take another sip. So it kind of goes through Spider-Man again, and then he sees somebody who's obviously robbing the bank. Kind of talks to him. He's being friendly. Basically he's saying, he kind of says, "Oh, you should go home," and he's like, "Sure. And by the way, what's your name?" And he says, "I'm the Shocker." So we have the introduction of the Shocker, and of course, Peter Parker thought the guy was just going to go, he got caught, he would go away. And of course he was dumb, and he gets shocked. He goes home and eats. And then he gets busted by his daughter, who was scared of the suit. So then they kind of have a conversation about he doesn't need to be scared, but she didn't like the suit. And then, of course, hey, don't tell your mom that you seen me in this suit, right? So I thought it was kind of interesting. What I'm curious and hesitant and so many other emotions is, if this comic book takes off, and we all know that one of the things that's always been consistent in a lot of the Spider-Man comic books is tragedy, will they go somewhere and have something happen to the kids? Will they go somewhere and have something happen to his wife? Will they keep Uncle Ben alive for a while? When are we going to see that scene that says, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So then you kind of go into here about Wilson Fisk, and they're talking about the attempts on his life, and this is apparently they're alluding to this is the guy that's on the council or whatever it is for the Maker, and he keeps saying that they have an asset and pointing to this guy. So I think this is alluding to this guy being a major character. Obviously there's the eye patch, so there could be some hits in there. It's not going to be Nick Fury, but I'll be curious to see who this ends up being that he's talking about, because they've shown him in the other issue, so I do feel like this is going to be a character, a villain, or maybe even a good guy down the road. He's having a conversation with his wife. Then he sees, lo and behold, the Shocker fellow again. Let's go ahead and take another sip. They get into a fight, and then, of course, he tells another sob story about, hey, don't hurt me, and, I just did this for my family, and, he gets shocked again coming off. Now, I didn't hear anything that says the spider sense, but I do notice that the drawing right here where it's kind of got these lines, if you look at those lines right here, I'm wondering if that's the spider sense and he just doesn't know what it is yet. Or is he not going to have the spider sense? I'm very curious. And then you kind of see him jumping off, and then you've got whoever the Green Goblin is. I'm assuming this is the Green Goblin anyway, watching it. So I have a feeling this is going to kind of go where the Green Goblin's not going to be who we think it is, because he attacked Wilson Fisk earlier on, and he's watching this. I have a feeling in this world he's going to start out as a good guy. Then we end with Peter Parker coming home, and then you see the daughter, May, who drew a picture. It says, "Dad, I drew a picture of your spider. I hope you like it. You're the best. Love, Dad." And it's got the blue and red. So I think this is going to be in the next issue, we'll see the kind of the introduction of the different costume. And then as he was given, as they mentioned earlier, he was given this, what are they calling it again? The Pyotech suit. So I'm assuming it could, change and manipulate and kind of look like different costumes and whatnot. Let me go ahead and take another sip. Do really enjoy the pacings of this. Like I said, it's kind of setting up. I feel like they're taking their time. They're not rushing this at all. I do like the family dynamics that he's bringing in. And oh, look at this. I just noticed this. This dish rag that he's drying the towels with, it has the traditional Spider-Man red with the crossing back and forth. So that's kind of interesting. But I really like what they're doing with this. I really like the art. I like where the story's going. I feel like we've got multiple stories going on. We've got Uncle Ben and Jonah, what's going to happen with them. We've got this drama that's going on with Kingpin. We've got what's going to obviously happen with Spider-Man, Peter Parker, and then this mysterious Green Goblin, and seeing where that's going to go. But this is just kind of really quick walkthrough of what we read in this particular issue. Let's go ahead and take a sip. Would really love to hear some comments in the comment section of, are you reading this comic, and if so, do you like it? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? Is it hitting all the points that you want in a Spider-Man comic book? What do you think of the story? What do you think of the art? What do you think? Where do you think they're going to go with this? And then on the other Ultimates, what do you think they're going to do with that as well? But I'd really love to hear your comments on this, and also if you have some other comics that you would like me to kind of go through. You know, I'm not doing an in-depth analysis on the issue and kind of getting in everything. I'm just kind of going through it. What I do is I read these real quick, and then I'll go through it relatively quick on these videos, just so we can kind of get almost a live reading of it. But again, I really appreciate everybody taking the time to watch these. Please like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And until next time, cheers. Welcome to another edition of Whiskey, Games, and Nerd Stuff. Today's whiskey, we are still finishing off the Nikia Days. We're almost done with this bottle on ice. Let's go ahead and take a sip. And like I've said in other videos, definitely enjoy this one much more on ice. And today's Nerd Stuff is we're going to go through Ultimate Spider-Man number 3. This is the variant edition. And like I've said in the other videos, I usually will wait a few weeks before I do kind of a spoiler discussion about this. Figured if somebody hasn't read it by now, they may not. So if you haven't watched the discussion on issue number 1 and issue number 2, would recommend that you go and look at those. And if you do not want any spoilers for issue number 3, then I would recommend that you don't watch the rest of this. Would love to hear what your thoughts are on this variant edition. In the earlier episodes or issues, I wasn't sure if he had spider sense or did not have spider sense. This is indicating to me that he does have the spider sense, but I could be wrong, and if I am, please make a comment in the comment section. I don't recall them specifically laying out in issue number 1 and issue number 2 that he does in fact have spider sense. So the issue starts off with MJ and Richard is Peter Parker's and MJ's son, and their daughter May. And basically, MJ and Richard are kind of joking about how they feel like they're hiding something, and of course, Peter and May are playing coy. And then the only part of the comic I'm going to read is kind of like the little summary. 20 years ago, the Maker prevented a radioactive spider from biting a young Peter Parker. He likewise prevented the creation of any other superheroes and formed a secret council to rule the world from the shadows. 2 months ago, Peter Parker, now a married father of 2, allowed a radioactive spider to bite him after Tony Stark sent Peter a Picotech suit, the spider, and warnings of the Maker's Council. Since then, Peter has used his incredible new abilities to pursue the truth of the world, while his uncle Ben Parker pursues it through investigative journalism after leaving the corrupt Daily Bugle owned by Wilson Fisk. The one hitch in Peter's heroism, his daughter May Parker has discovered his secret identity. And as you can see, the writer is Johnathan Hickman, and the artist, and I know I'm going to say this wrong, Marco Scioletto. The color artist, I'll let everybody kind of read through those. And I thought it was kind of cool where they're going through trying different variations of what the new suit's going to look like. I thought this was kind of a cool little setup. And then it goes into an irresponsible Peter Parker taking his child on a ride through New York City. If Child Protective Services don't get called on you for that, I don't know what they would get called on you for. And I'm still getting used to the banter that plays out the next couple of pages. So Ben Parker and Jonah Jameson are partners, and they've broken off from the Bugle, and this is their new office. So there's some really cool dialogue back and forth. They're joking, and I really got to say, I really like Peter's beard in this. I do like the writing and where this is going. It's kind of a cool spin on it. And they kind of go on to talk about how the Green Goblin had been targeting some of the locations owned by Wilson Fisk. Then we go into good old Spider-Man, basically on a stakeout, kind of joking around. Let's go ahead and take a sip. And then lo and behold, right when he's ready to give up, he's seeing two individuals going at it. The Green Goblin and this person who, from initially the symbol, I'm like, oh, that's Bullseye. And of course, right here, it's Bullseye. So, again, I did warn you about spoilers. Then they have this cool fight scene where they go back and forth between Bullseye and the Green Goblin, and Spider-Man gets involved. And I have to say, I really like the banter and the dialogue back and forth between these three characters. It really took me back and reminded me of the old Spider-Man that I recall reading, where it was kind of, he didn't take himself too serious. There was some joking and bantering going back and forth. And I feel this is carrying on, even though this universe is a lot darker. I really appreciated it and thought it was kind of cool. And again, they kind of talk back and forth. They're fighting, and then of course, the two of them knock him out, and then Green Goblin has him taken away, and they're not sure what they're going to do next. Then what we see is Green Goblin apparently pairs with the Picotech suit, and I know I'm probably saying that wrong, and then lo and behold, it takes off his mask, and now we see Peter Parker's face. So I find that we're in issue number 3, and his secret identity is not all that secret. Then we discover that the Green Goblin is Harry, and Harry introduces himself to Peter, and they say, hey, let's go get a drink. Now, it may not seem like they opened up a lot in this particular issue, but I do feel like there's a lot going on here. I feel like there's a lot of potential. We all know, or I shouldn't say we all know, anybody who's been a fan of Spider-Man knows the relationship between Harry Osborn and Peter Parker and the Green Goblin and his father and everything that's happened with that. I'm really curious to see where they're going to take this into. Do Green Goblin and Spider-Man team up, become allies, and stick with it, for the long term? Or is there a betrayal, or does something happen? We all know that one of the common things with Spider-Man is there is some kind of tragedy. So could there be some kind of tragedy that turns the Green Goblin against Spider-Man? Can something happen where Spider-Man turns against the Green Goblin? And I do find myself curious as what's going to happen to his family, because I feel like they're setting us up for something to happen to MJ or one of the kids. And then that has the potential to turning him on a little dark side, or if that's just something that they're going to keep going and having that tension of that possible happen. All right, let's go ahead and take a sip. I have to say, I really am enjoying this reimagination of the Ultimate Spider-Man a lot more than I thought I would. I've actually really enjoyed the bulk of the new Ultimate line that's coming out, and I have talked about some of the other comics, and of course I will. I will be doing issue 4 here probably next week, a week after this posting, just to kind of, the goal is to do one of these each week now that I believe at the time of this filming, issue 6 or 7 is out right now. Have not read them. What I try to do on these is read them, and then hurry and do the video shortly within a few minutes after I've read it, just while it's fresh in my mind, because I didn't want to read this as we go, but I wanted to have kind of a fresh perspective and get people's thoughts on this. I really would love to hear comments in the section of what you've thought of the first 3 issues so far. How do you feel about each issue representing kind of a month in time? And I would love to hear some predictions of what you think is going to happen. Who are some of the other villains that we're going to see? Will we see introductions of any other hero characters or maybe villains that are being spun as heroes? And what are some of the things that you think are going to happen? And what are some of the things that you're fearful is going to happen? When I first started doing this series of videos, one of the things I had thought about was making a prediction of what I thought was going to happen in the next issue. But then I thought that what would happen if I keep making predictions and they're all wrong? Everybody would make fun of me. And certainly didn't want to have that happen. And it's something I may do maybe after the 4th issue. I'll say, okay, here's what happened in the 4th issue. Here's what I can see happening in the next couple ones. And we'll kind of go from there. But I would love to hear what your thoughts are. Would you like me to make some predictions on what I think is going to happen? Do you like the kind of the format of how I'm going through this, where just kind of I'm not reading specific things out of here necessarily. I'm not spoiling the dialogue. I'm not spoiling all the scenes, but I'm just kind of giving a brief interview. Would love to hear what your thoughts are on this. I do appreciate everybody taking the time to watch this video. Please like, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. And until next time, everybody, cheers. Welcome to another Whiskey, Games, and Nerd Stuff. Today's Whiskey, we are slowly finishing off the Heaven Hills Grain of Glass. And today's Nerd Stuff, we are going to talk about Ultimate Spider-Man issue number 4. Let's go ahead and take a sip. I really enjoy that, and like I've said in other videos, I really like this one when it's got some ice on it. And as I've said for these other videos, if you watched these before, I tend to wait until these issues have been out for a couple months before I talk about it. But there will be spoilers in here, so if you do not want to have any spoilers coming up, I would suggest you just don't watch the video until you've read the comic. If you don't worry about the spoilers, if you read it and you're interested in my thoughts on it, please like, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and let's go ahead and begin. I love how they start off with Peter and MJ talking this. At least what I felt so far, and I would love to hear your comments and your thoughts as well. I feel like up to this point that Peter and MJ seem to have a much healthier relationship than they have in some of the other Spider-Man comics. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I would be curious if you feel that way. To me, it feels like there's it's just a healthier relationship. And I gotta say, I love the beard on Peter. It's just something in there that I think it just fits him. I just like it. Maybe it's because I have a beard and goatee, and I'm a little bit biased. So MJ and Peter are having dinner with Harry Osborn. And they kind of go on talking, and I won't kind of go into and read this, but they have a nice little conversation. I like the ebb and flow of the conversation between the three of them, especially with having, that backstory of what their relationship is in the other comic books. And then what's really crazy is they bring in Harry's wife, and it's Gwen Stacy. So I am ecstatic about some of the cool things that they could do with this. We all know, or I shouldn't say we all know, anybody who is a fan of the Spider-Man comics knows the story with Gwen Stacy and what happens. I don't know if there's foreshadowing here, but I do really like this play between Harry and Gwen and then Peter and MJ. I'm very curious to see what craziness comes with this. I've got some theories about what's going to happen, but I really thought this was oh my God. And then, as always, the only part that I usually will typically read is the summary part. 20 years ago, the Maker prevented a radioactive spider from biting a young Peter Parker. He likewise prevented the creation of any other superheroes and formed a secret council to rule the world from the shadows. 3 months ago, Tony Stark sent Peter, now a married father of 2, that same radioactive spider along with a Picotech suit and warnings of the Maker's Council. The spider's bite gifted Peter incredible powers that he used to aid a masked vigilante called Green Goblin against an assassination sent by Wilson Fisk, an agent of the Maker's Council. Somehow Green Goblin was able to take control of Peter's Pico suit and expose his identity, but he also revealed himself as Harry Osborn, the billionaire heir of Oscorp Industries. Let's go ahead and take a sip. And of course, the writer is Johnathan Hickman, Guest artist on this is David Messina. Here's the various other people. I gotta say, I really love the story in this. This is a comic book that's really gotten me excited. Gotten back into comics again. I like where this is going. I hope they kind of go with it where some spots that will probably upset a few people, but Spider-Man, Peter Parker has always been defined by the tragedies in that's happened to him, and I'm very curious to see what they're going to do. And I would love to hear some thoughts and opinions of what everybody else thinks. So there's kind of more of a conversation where between Gwen, Peter, and Harry. And what's the interesting thing is if you'll notice through some of these panels, they have the reflection of different people that are talking. And I don't know if that's foreshadowing or hinting or something that's going on. But I found that very interesting. This kind of goes into, you got Jonah and Uncle Ben kind of talk at the house. They go back to the conversation that they're having. And one of the things that really struck me is this right here. Where they talk about, she says, Gwen says, people need heroes. And she's looking right at Peter. And it's something about that look that she has for Peter. I feel like there's a connection there. I feel like there's some sparks there. It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out with Harry and Gwen and MJ. So they continue to talk. They have a good conversation. It flips back to Uncle Ben, talking to the kids. And then that kind of goes into Gwen asking to set up a meeting with J. Jonah and Uncle Ben because MJ was kind of handling the PR for him. And here's what's really crazy. So then it kind of goes into a conversation between Peter and Harry where Peter had told Gwen. And he's lecturing Peter on being honest. And he makes a comment on one of these panels. It's this particular comment in the panel. You seriously think you can live this life and insulate the people you love from the consequences? To me, that's just foreshadowing to the extreme. So really, really curious to see what's going to happen. And then what's awesome, and I thought next to the Gwen Stacy as Harry's wife, this is the part that I was like, oh my God, I just got that nerd excitement where Harry is saying, and you have great power, Peter. And with great power comes great responsibility. And I literally got goosebumps on my arms when I read that. And I know that sounds nerdy as hell, but I did. Let's go ahead and take another drink. Then it kind of goes into a little conversation about, they're walking home, about their opinions on this. And again, I kind of went through this really quick. I'm not reading through these panel for panel, page for page, but just kind of giving a preview. I really, really think that those people that were fans of comic books back in the day and kind of got out of it, I would highly, highly recommend giving this new Ultimate line a try. The Ultimates, I think, is awesome. Ultimate Spider-Man is great. And I'm slowly getting to the other Ultimate series. But I really, really think this is kind of a cool setup they have. Would love to hear your thoughts and your opinions. What do you think are some of the things that's going to happen? Do you think that Peter is going to lose anybody in the family? Do you think that there's going to be that Harry will turn into a villain, that something's going to happen? Or are they going to completely spin this on our toes and will something happen to MJ and the kids and Peter becomes a villain? Let's go ahead and take another sip. And I do truly enjoy this Heaven Hill Grain the Glass. I'm almost finished with it. In fact, I think we should just probably kill it off right now and call that a kill bottle. Now the question is, what are we going to drink next? Would love to hear what your thoughts are on this particular bottle, if you liked it, what you thought about it, and the two others that went with it. Again, please like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Would love to hear in the comment sections your thoughts and feelings about Ultimate Spider-Man number 4. Would also like your opinions on, for those that have watched the first three, do you feel that I'm waiting a proper amount of time to kind of talk through this, even though I'm giving the spoiler section? At the filming of this, issue number 7 had already come out. So I do feel like, I'm several months behind on these. But if this is something that you feel like, hey, let's wait, until it's been out for a month or maybe 2 months, then talk about it. Would really like to hear your thoughts. And let's take one more sip. And one more time, I would love to give a shout out to everybody on here. I don't think these people get enough credit for what they do in the comic books. So if you like the writing, the art, the lettering, all that stuff, here's some people to check out. Really, really recommend this. And until next time, folks, cheers. Never mind. There was one more thing I was going to say. For those that are reading the Ultimate line, what is a hero or a title that you would like to see come out that has not already come out? Please throw that in the comment section. Until next time, cheers. Welcome to another edition of Whiskey, Games, and Nerd Stuff. Today's whiskey is actually going to be Kraken Rum and just a little rum and Coke. And today's Nerd Stuff, we're going to go through and talk about issue number 5 of Ultimate Spider-Man. Let's go ahead and take a sip. I always enjoy Kraken Rum, but my preference is always to have it with Dr. Pepper. Because if you get that good mix, it pretty much just tastes like Dr. Pepper. And for those that haven't watched the other kind of discussion videos of Ultimate Spider-Man, here in a minute I will start getting into spoilers. So if you do not want to have any spoilers, then I would say skip towards the last minute of the video. And if you have not seen our discussions about issues 1 through 4, go ahead and check those out, and if I can remember, I'll go ahead and try and link those in the description. First off, I gotta say, I really like this cover. I kind of feel like this is a little ominous about what's to come, but I really kind of like this one, thought it stood out, and wanted to point that out. So with the exception of a few spots, I'm not going to go through and read the comic. I'm just going to kind of flip through it and just kind of give a good synopsis. So again, spoiler warnings. We are going to kind of talk about stuff. So for the first 2 pages, it kind of it starts off with Norman Osborn basically upset that his son Harry is late. They get talking. He basically kind of gives him a thing about, I've been waiting for you to become a man. You're late, and kind of that typical father berating that son to grow up. And then as they're talking, you see the explosion, and Harry sees that the tower got destroyed. And I thought that was kind of an oh damn moment. So I'll go ahead and read what what they're saying for month 5. A diabolical genius known as the Maker created the ideal Earth by systematically preventing anyone from ever becoming a superhero. To rule his perfected Earth, he placed supervillains in charge of different regions, and together, the Maker's Council quietly orchestrated the history of the world. When Tony Stark discovered the true history of the world, the Maker's Council perpetuated a terrible attack on New York City in Stark's name. 2 of the victims in that attack were Norman Osborn, CEO of Oscorp, and his wife Emily. And now their son, Harry Osborn, is about to learn the truth of the world himself in a quest for justice along the way, eventually leading him to a masked vigilante named Peter Parker. And of course, the writer on this is Johnathan Hickman. Guest artist is David Messina. And I'll go ahead and kind of highlight this to show the other names. And we will go ahead and go through after we have a sip. So then it kind of goes into the attorney for Harry estate, kind of talk about what's going on. And then he gets this card which everybody knows what it is apparently, and they don't tell us until we kind of learn later on that he's set to meet with Kingpin. And they kind of have a conversation going back and forth. And basically, Kingpin is like, hey, I want you to buy Stark Towers because I don't want to know what to do with it, what it's worth. You go ahead and take it. So it sounds like Harry goes ahead and buys it. Then it fast forwards to a few weeks later where they're kind of getting into what they discovered was a secret room that was uncovered in one of the servers, like an offsite server they found about. And lo and behold, it looks like it's armor, some of the old Iron Man armor in there. So they kind of have a conversation. And what I thought was pretty cool is they're talking about how there's more files and things that pop up. And they kind of throw a little name in here, Doc Ock. So, Dr. Octavius, which you have to believe this is going to come into play later on. So I kind of thought that was really cool. Let's go ahead and take a drink. Then it fast forwards, a little bit later to where Dr. Octavius and Harry is kind of uncovering more stuff. They're uncovering files. They're seeing what's going on. And they're kind of uncovering more and more of the truth of what's been going on and the lies that have been told, kind of about the state of things, which I think is kind of interesting. It goes on to some early actions of Harry as the Green Goblin, going into stuff, which I thought was kind of cool. Then it's a little bit more story in there. Then it kind of skips into a conversation between Harry and Peter. And I really like the dialogue that's going between these two. You can tell it's kind of building up that friendship that they're going to have. But I also feel like they're planting the seeds for something just downright bad to happen. And I'm starting to wonder who's it going to happen to? Is something going to happen to Gwen, who is married to Harry, or is something going to happen to MJ? We just don't know. And then it kind of goes into him now talking about this person that he kind of held prisoner. It doesn't get into the details of who it is, but basically I think it was Bullseye from the prior issue. Basically him saying he's going to find out what's going on. And I kind of like the last bit of dialogue that they have here, which kind of summed up the beginning pages. My father always talked about the difference between being a boy and a man, and maybe he was right, but maybe you are too. Am I a boy or a man? Am I a hero or something else? I guess we're about to find out. And I think that's pretty cool. I think that they're really leading into some possibilities of some interesting directions that they can go with this. Is Harry going to fall into what we've seen in the other Spider-Man comics of following in the Green Goblin's footsteps? Is he going to slide into that villain? Is he going to be a hero? Are they going to kind of flip something and end up having him be the hero and then Peter, turning bad? You got to remember, in this universe, MJ and Peter Parker are married and they have kids. And anybody who has, been a fan of Spider-Man comics, the movies, the cartoons, one of the things that's always followed Peter Parker, Spider-Man, is tragedy. That's kind of been the thing. Into the Spider-Verse with Miles Morales, it even kind of talks about that as well. That's just one of the things that kind of follows Spider-Man is tragedy. So I'm very curious to see where this is going to go. And I really kind of have to do a shout out to them on this issue. It's basically the Harry issue is what I'm calling it. And I thought that was cool. I thought it was really cool to kind of take this character, walk through what's, the issues that he was having with his father, that back and forth, and then going into the company, and then him basically struggling to find out who he's going to be. He talks about, is he a child or a man? Is he a hero or something else? So I think you're already seeing that internal fight, that internal dialogue within himself of, is he going to be a hero or is he going to be something else? Let's go ahead and another drink. Would really love to hear everybody's thoughts and opinions on issue number 5 What did you think about it? What did you like? What did you not like? Would also like to see what your thoughts are on this series run thus far. Yes, this is a little bit behind, because I've mentioned before I've tried to keep these a few months behind, but I'm going to start doing these a little bit sooner and run these discussions, these videos, probably maybe just 1 month or 2 months at most behind. So you'll see a couple of these pop out over the next couple of weeks. But I do appreciate everybody taking the time to watch these videos. Would really love to hear your feedback on what you have liked and not liked about the Ultimate Spider-Man for this particular run. What are some of your favorite characters? And what have been some of your surprise, goosebump moments? Still for me, the ones that stand out the most is finding out that Gwen was married to Harry, and then Harry giving Peter Parker that line, "With great power, it becomes great responsibility." That still gave me kind of goosebumps, and I really like where this is going. Let's take one more drink. And would also like to know, what kind of rums do you have go with your Cokes or your Dr. Pepper, and what do you mix? And again, I appreciate everybody that watches this. Please like, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. And until next time, everybody, cheers. Welcome to another Whiskey, Games, and Nerd Stuff. Today's whiskey we're enjoying Blanton's, which is always a great whiskey. Let's go ahead and take a sip. I just love how this tastes. And today's Nerd Stuff is we're going to go ahead and talk about Ultimate Spider-Man number 6. For those that have watched these others in the series that I've done, I tend to do these a few months after the fact. Part of that is then I don't have to worry so much about spoilers. But I am going to go ahead and start doing these a little sooner, a little more regular, and be maybe just 1 or 2 months behind instead of several months behind. And after this particular episode, I will be doing a synopsis of all 6 combined into one. But let's go ahead and discuss this. But first, let's take another sip of this great whiskey. First, I got to say, I love the cover. I always like the covers where the superhero's uniform is all torn up. I think it's really cool. And then, as I always do, I'll go ahead and read through the first part of this. And for those that are not aware, this is just kind of the synopsis of what's been going on for the last 5 months. 20 years ago, the Maker prevented a radioactive spider from biting a young Peter Parker. He likewise prevented the creation of any superheroes and formed a secret council to rule the world from the shadows. 5 months ago, Tony Stark sent Peter that same radioactive spider along with a Picotech suit and warnings of the Maker's council. Since then, Peter has used the incredible powers granted by the spider bite to fight crime alongside a masked vigilante called the Green Goblin, Harry Osborn, co-CEO of Oscorp. They fight meeting an assassin hired by Wilson Fisk, the kingpin of New York and a subordinate of the Maker's Council. Fisk is also the owner of the Daily Bugle, Peter's boss. But so far, Peter has managed to keep his second life a secret from everyone, well, except his daughter May. So let's go ahead and see what we have in here. So, for those who have not read these particular comics, yes, Peter Parker is married to Mary Jane, and they have 2 children. So this is where they're kind of talking at dinner, and May, his daughter, asks what happened, and he's got these bruises on his face. So they start talking about them, and Peter says, "Oh, it's nothing. It's nothing. I just was clumsy." And then what's kind of cool is May, who like a kid would be like, Dad, you got hurt being, and then she kind of let the cat out of the bag. So obviously, she's sad. MJ knows something. His son knows something. So then he kind of goes on to talk about what happened. Well, so they kind of have the beginning in here where you've got the Green Goblin and Spider-Man kind of talking about going into the building. They kind of talk about code names. They end up saying that he likes Green Goblin, but he wasn't going to let anybody else name him. I kind of like the banter, the talk back and forth. And then what happens is they go ahead and storm into Kingpin's office, and basically he just kind of stands there like, hey, what's up, guys? So he's talking about how he's not surprised. And then what's kind of cool is, he said something that you would think would be obvious, especially in this universe, is something you want to keep in mind for the future. Manhattan is mine, and every camera in a 3-block radius feeds into this building. So he's basically giving you a warning of, hey, I'm kind of watching everything. And then right here is the first time in the series that I'm getting the sense, no pun intended, that he's got the spider sense. So he's saying, wait, something's going on. And they kind of have that little signification that all the different artists will do about the spider sense. I will have to go back and reread the issues. But as far as I can remember, this is the first time that I recall them getting into the spider sense on this. Let's go ahead and take another sip. So he kind of gets into a fight. They're fighting back and forth. He kind of talks about how he's enhanced. Again, they got into a good fight. Kingpin's kind of holding his own against both of them. Green Goblin throws one of his bombs. And then you can kind of tell they've got a good knockdown, drag-out fight. Now, I don't know how strong and what enhancements he has in this particular issue, but check this out with the tattoos and whatnot that he has. I have a feeling that something like this will come into play. I do really like the color that's going on, but you can kind of tell he is getting wailed on. So they find a way to escape, and then he says they're out of here, and then it's almost like you kind of have a little grin from Kingpin, like he enjoyed that, which, I'm not surprised with his character. So then what happens is you kind of go into them talking about, he's telling the story. Obviously, his son's worried. They've got questions. He's got these bruises on his face. They send the kids to bed. And you can kind of tell. At first, I thought that May was going to be running away crying, but obviously, everybody cares about Peter. They want to make sure he's okay, and everybody's not shocked like you would think. But I do like how his son's just kind of hey, be careful, Dad, kind of a thing. And then I really like this next panel where they kind of walk into, and Peter's like, so he's, keep in mind, his wife just found out that he's been battling villains and he's a superhero, and he kind of walks in with a shoulder shrug like, almost like he left the toilet seat up or he forgot the anniversary or something. So I kind of thought that was amusing. And then, of course, he kind of gets into, she's basically saying, hey, I'm proud of you. I am scared. I am proud. And they kind of talk about the costume, and puts it on. And she's like, hey, I want to see what you can do. And then it goes into, there's two things in here. First, there was the whole, this is cool, because they were coming up with his code name. And he's like, what's my code name going to be? And she's like, well, hey, isn't it obvious? It's Spider-Man. Then after that excitement of him being called Spider-Man that wore off, here was my thought. Earlier, when they break into Kingpin's office, he makes a point of saying, hey, I've got all these cameras in a 3-block radius of this building feed into him. I own Manhattan. Now you've got Spider-Man, Peter Parker, swinging around Manhattan with his wife on his back. I can't help but feel this is going to come back to bite them somehow. This has to come into play. And I really enjoyed this particular issue. So other than the quick fight in there with Kingpin, there wasn't too much going on. But I do see a lot of layers that are becoming in here. I see more of the layers of the relationship between Harry, where they kind of hint at some of the darkness that he's going to have, and the ends justifying the means comment that he kind of alludes to in here. I see where, Peter talking about how he hasn't broken any laws. Kingpin knows something's going on. There is a dialogue back and forth. Peter is being the smart-ass Spider-Man that he is, that we all know and love. Let's go ahead and take a sip. I just love how this tastes. And I have to imagine that he's also recorded the events in the office to go back and play. Well, Peter works for the Daily Bugle, which Wilson Fisk owns. So at some point they're going to have a situation where they talk to each other, and you have to imagine with somebody like Kingpin, who is very intelligent, who makes plans. He's going to have to put two and two together at some point. And I do still feel like they're building up to something horrible to happen to Peter. I don't know how dark they're going to go with it. I don't know how they're going to play it. But I will be shocked if something doesn't happen to MJ or one of the kids and we have some repercussions from that. I don't know how it's going to happen or when, but it is going to be interesting to see if they go that route. And I don't know if they will or not. And quite frankly, I don't know if I want them to go that route, but just the fact that they could keeps me in some suspense. I would love to know what your thoughts are on issue 6. And then what you've liked up through the first 6 issues of this, some things that you've liked and things that you haven't liked. But also love to find and get some comments from the people who enjoy Blanton's. This is such an amazing whiskey. I like to drink this just now and then. It's not my usual nightcap, but it's definitely something that I will have when I just kind of want something really good. I do appreciate everybody watching the video. Please like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I will be doing issue 7 here in about a week, and we will be doing a summary of the first 6 issues. Until next time, folks, cheers.